a call. It's a call to intimacy. It's a call to intimacy. I know that you have a secret place, but you have to turn that secret place to a place of intimacy.
This question says, if a woman was a prostitute before she became a Christian, so when she becomes a Christian, the properties she got from the men she slept with, is she supposed to give it away or she should keep it? Please, what do you think? What do you think? She should give it away. To who? To the Lord. Where is the Lord? Where is the Lord? Who will collect it? Where is he? To the Lord or to her Lord? Depends on the properties. Sisters have started introducing conditions. Depends on the properties. We are talking about properties like house, like car, like furniture in the house, like land. What should she do with the properties? Give it to the needy. Okay. What if the husband has need? Will he qualify? There's one village that we went on missions and then we're doing some kind of charity. So when it was time to give out things, you know, the normal stuff that we share, rice and those things in nylons and other stuff. So people were told to line up, but because of the number of people that have been in the village, you need to find a way to stratify. So we said, widows and orphans. And the old man joined the orphans queue and said that his own father is dead and his mother is dead. And in fact, that they died a long time ago. That man was probably, I don't know, it's in the village, so I may not be able to place very well. But definitely not younger than he was definitely in his late 60s. If not like in his early 70s. He said that widows and orphans, that him is an orphan. His dad and his mom are dead. So if you want to give something to the needy, and your husband needs land to build a house. All right. On a very serious note, these kinds of questions are very tricky to respond to in a vacuum. And I say in a vacuum because of context. So there are different contexts that could impact on how you respond to this kind of question. So the first thing to say is this. Anything that was ill-gotten, all right? When something is ill-gotten, and how you define what is ill-gotten in this context can also be quite tricky, because did she fraudulently get these things? And the answer would be no, she did not defraud people to get these things. All right? Somebody who was doing internet scam is in a very different category. Zacchaeus is in a very different category. Zacchaeus was basically just extorting people, and it was the process of extortion that was responsible largely for his wealth. That means he was collecting monies from people forcefully, that kind of thing, bribe and all of that. Now, in this case, it is the proceeds of an immoral activity. It is not the proceeds of a fraudulent activity. You get my point? So that it wasn't like this thing was forcefully gotten from people or illegitimately collected from people or it was stolen from people. That's not what it is. So that puts this in a very, very, very sensitive scenario where I think that it really would depend. It's like the general situation of restitution. And this is not even a matter of restitution, really. Okay? Now, because even in restitution, there is a blanket statement you cannot make. Because there are things that are almost impossible to restitute. And there are things that can be restituted. There are things that can be easily restituted. There are things that can be, very difficult to restitute if you can do that at all. So it may not always be an open and closed case to say, oh, yeah, just restitute. For instance, if you took life while you are an unbeliever, how do you restitute it when you become a believer, for instance? Right? You can bring the person back to life, isn't it? And restitution is not just the same thing as saying, I am sorry. Because you cannot say, well, you apologize to the family. Okay, if you stole somebody's car, will a simple apology do while you go on driving the car? Exactly. So you see, now you see that there's a sense in which an apology does not equate restitution. Do you get my point? But when a life has been taken, that's like the most you can do. You can't do beyond an apology, no matter how much you want to restitute. So even when we talk the restitution thing, it will still depend on the specifics that is involved. That's the point I'm trying to make. That is the same thing with this. My disposition would be to say that somebody would not want to keep the proceeds of such a terrible season of her life, all right, into this phase of her life, and that is just basically speaking from almost, if you like, a kind of a Christian conscience perspective or even a discretionary perspective. But even at that, it will depend on the specific things that are involved. Some things, you can do away with. Some things may be much harder to do away with, all right? Just like I said in the case of the restitution. There are things that you can easily, say, away with this, you empty this house, move these things away or that kind of a thing. And then there are certain things that maybe depend on what they are, that might be difficult to do that. And there are things that could be even tricky to draw the line. Or maybe you had legitimate income plus your income from prostitution, and then you put it together and you put it inside another thing. At the end of the day, it's not a straightforward scenario. Principle, however, for me would be to say that as much as possible you want to purge yourself of anything that ties you materially to that epoch of your life. Does that help? As with several other questions, like we said from the last time, this is why you need a community. These things are things that usually, there'll be somebody talking you through this process, walking you through this process. Some of these things, the truth of the matter is that it will also depend on conviction. And when that conviction comes, because if you are convicted to give it out, it cannot be a sin. Because even if you didn't get it illicitly, God can still convict you to give out something that you got legitimately. Do you get my point? Yes. So somebody can come on that conviction, and then you process that conviction within the leadership situation that exists in your context, so that this kind of cut and paste is not all that you have. it's always important that you process some of these very sensitive situations within a Christian trusted leadership context.